Hello everyone, welcome back to the Keep Productive YouTube channel. It's Francesco. I am very lucky to be joined by Amir, who is the head of Doist, both Todoist and Twist. It's good to have you, Amir. How are you, mate?
I'm pretty good. Yeah, it's
Good.
good to be back. I think we speak on these a few years in between. Yeah, so I think this one is like more recent. I think we spoke maybe a year ago or something.
Yeah, it was in Cambridge, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually, I think we had a good balance of like seeing each other remote and seeing each other in person, but it's not possible now.
Yeah, yeah. It's another world.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how, I guess, like I was saying before, like things really haven't changed much for Doist in terms of like structure. But how have, I guess, you guys been in the last 6 months or so now that this all has happened?
Yeah, honestly, like we are kind of experts at this. We have been at it for 10 years, but it's kind of like I told you, like it's, remote work with kind of like a extreme edition. And yeah, I mean, like even for us, it's very rough. It's very rough to, for instance, like, being on a lockdown with your kids,
Mm.
you know, and then you suddenly like need to do a job. You need to do like, like teaching. You need to do cleanup. You need to prepare food. You need to. I mean, it's kind of like, in the end, like it becomes very extreme. And I think a lot of people inside the team as well, uh, like can feel it.
Yeah.
It's not the best time. And like
Yeah,
also
it's
on the company
stressful.
level, like we are very understanding of that. Like it's not in this period that you produce your best work. This said,
Yeah.
I think we have been very productive, but like we are not really aiming to revolutionize anything. Just like you know uh, like
Yeah.
sail calmly and wait till this nightmare is over. That's kind of the strategy. Yeah.
That's it, yeah. But I feel like you were quite geared up for that sort of like I remember before you guys had some really good like policies about like time off and about health and wellness. So I think probably didn't change too much, but just got a bit more involved in it, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's very good to actually have that kind of policy. Yeah, like the worst thing would actually be to kind of push people in this, or even like I think what
Mm.
is happening for some of my friends that we know, it's kind of like being stuck in these like never-ending meetings, uh,
Mm.
and like chat rooms, and then suddenly you need to like watch kids,
Yeah.
prepare food, and also like be in meetings all day long. Like it's really, really, really bad. And I think like a lot of people will have like traumas of this period.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, especially like in leadership positions. Like some people are stuck like in like 5+ hours of meetings per day. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
Crazy.
I don't think that is
That's
very
a lot.
healthy. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that will be some burnouts, and I'm very like grateful
Mm.
that in this like we have another culture where we don't have like these real
Mm.
time. So that means like also you can kind of disconnect, and you don't need to be connected all the time. You
Yeah.
can have the flexibility. Yeah.
And near the end, I'll ask you about that because I'm like curious because I guess a lot of companies are like so used to being in these like immersive meetings all day. I'd like to hear like what you define as meeting worthy, but I'll ask you that later. We'll maybe talk about some like product updates first. So we'll start with Twist because you guys have like you have sort of jigged and redesigned the compose window, haven't you? So how did that go? And I guess in general, like how is Twist? Where's it heading in the future?
Yeah, I mean, one of the issues with Twist, it's kind of like it's another paradigm, like this asynchronous by default, and like really like creating a product that's kind of mindful of people's time,
Mhm.
and where actually our focus, like, let's get you to spend as little time as possible inside the app.
Yeah.
And not like Slack. Slack optimizes for let's get as much engagement, and like you messaging all day. That's great for them. Like for us, that's kind of the nightmare scenario.
Mm.
um, So it's kind of very different, like, value systems that we have. This said, like, we need to teach people about this, and that's kind of like very tough, because a lot of people prefer, I mean, you just like look at like the growth of like Zoom, they prefer synchronous communication. They actually prefer to be online all the time. And I don't think many actually like take their like mental health into consideration of this. Yeah, so for us, it's kind of like, for Twist, like, how do we actually take this to the like next step? So like we have done a lot of like smaller updates, but I think like in next year, and we have like some crazy ideas, like there's a lot of like ideas that are brewing, and I really hope like we can kind of like reach to a point where we actually have something that's like much better for people, for teams. So really something that kind of empowers communication, that actually lets you disconnect, and also like lets you have like richer and better communication inside like a company and inside your team. Yeah, so we have like a lot of ideas there, and it will really be like radical, like counter positioning to what the market is doing, like with this online all the time, synchronous, like chit chat.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm quite excited, and I mean, it's also like really hard work. Like, it's much easier to say, okay, like let's just copy, Slack. That's what Microsoft
Yeah.
started. Like that will be much easier, because you just go in and copy, and you're not like like our stance kind of that everybody else is doing something wrong, and we want to fix this. So that's kind of the stance. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing is that I've seen like I think in Microsoft Teams they release like a virtual commute sort of feature, and it's sort of like I understand the benefit of it, but they've had some like sort of well-being features, but I think it's like trying to get you on the platform all the time. I think is like what I'm saying is like, is Twist planning to make these features to get you off the computer, or is it more like around you being in a sort of hub when you're on it, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the problem right now with Twist is that we promised something, but I don't think we delivered this yet.
Okay.
So like for me personally, like the tool should be I think flow is very important, and it's very important that you can process stuff in batches. So for instance, like I can go in and work for 1 hour and just like process my communication stream, and then I can like disconnect and not think about it. So that will kind of be the default mode. And right now it's still too much where you actually like, you kind of get addicted to it, and then you need to, you check it like every 10 minutes or like every half an hour. And that is definitely like an anti pattern from our side. So it's kind of like trying to make some features that kind of make batch processing easier, and also like celebrate the batch processing. For instance, like the inbox zero state is very critical, I think, for this, or at least like, and also just like, for instance, how you design the inbox as well. I think like some companies have done this really well, like Superhuman and Hey are good examples of this. Where you basically try to kind of like, optimize towards like the flow states, and also like the inbox states, and also like batches. So you don't need to go in there and like every 10 minutes you need to like look if there's something on red or not.
Yeah. Fantastic. That sounds I think the way forward. It'd be interesting to see where, like, when that all lands, how it looks like. So yeah, I will keep updated with that. And a lot of people in the community, obviously, big fans of Todoist, and obviously it's such a powerful tool. Many people have been using for years. What are the next sort of stages for Todoist? Because from my side, it sort of feels like, do you like Marvel? The Marvel movies. It's like I felt like Boards was like Endgame, and now it's like working out what the MCU Phase 5 is like. And maybe you could share a bit more about that in terms of like what's next for Todoist.
Yeah, I mean, something I'm very proud of is like after we have actually finished the foundations, like we have been shipping a lot of uh, like more advanced updates and actually
Yeah.
stuff that really changes the product, and I think also improves it in a big way. So yeah, I mean that's something, and I think we will continue doing this. Like I have kind of like posted a screenshot of like dynamic views that we call them, but it's basically that you can kind of control how like a view, and a view can be a project, a filter, or whatever, like how sorting, grouping, and filtering happens there. So in the past, like we would actually define this for you, or you would need to like do manual sorting. Right now you can just say, okay, I want this project sorted by date, and then whenever you add something, it's just like automatically sorted, and it's like done across platforms as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is kind of like a small thing, but I think it's a very important thing for a lot of people, just like yeah, resolving like this grouping and sorting thing, so you can just like look at the data as you want it and not as we want it.
Yeah.
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 And long term, like we are also like working on like new native apps, not native apps, new apps. They are actually not native. New apps for like the desktops, like new
Okay.
hybrid apps. But actually, some of it, like we have really done some, I think, amazing engineering there, where actually some things will actually be native and some other things will be kind of like hybrid. But for a regular user, they will actually not really notice this. And especially like on a platform like Windows, like historically we have been really, really bad at Windows.
Oh, right.
So we are actually like bringing amazing desktop app for Windows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that, just sorry, Amir. Like, what sort of prompted you to do that? Because, like, from a user's end, the Mac app, and from what I know of other people, the desktop app seems to run quite well. Is there like a specific reason you want them to run faster and better, or like what's the idea?
Yeah, I mean, the thing the problem we had in the past is basically like a lot of the stuff were kind of hacks,
Okay.
And right now we kind of have like a really nice foundation layer that kind of targets Mac, Linux, and Windows with the same code base.
Yeah.
So like the Mac app kind of works, it's nice, but like we want to have a foundation where we can build much more powerful stuff, and also do that on Windows and do that on Linux without like a lot of complexities. So we have done the same thing for Twist. So basically, like we're actually like launching about 6, I think, hybrid apps.
Oh, right.
So it's kind of like it's. But the thing is, like it's the same code base. Well, 2 code bases, so it saves like a ton of time. And also, I mean, for instance, like right now on Windows 10, like we have not launched boards or upcoming view, and the design language is very different and stuff like that. It's kind of like it's really messy to go in and like build specific native apps. But with this, we can kind of have the best from like the native world. We can basically like use any native component that we want, and then we can also have the hybrid tech, like web tech inside it. So you kind of have like these hybrid apps that is basically how the whole ecosystem is moving.
Exciting. That's sort of what like Evernote's doing right now, right? What they've done in terms of like refresh it. How long do you think it will take? Just out of curiosity.
I mean, we are actually like almost done with that.
Okay. Oh, that's really good.
So we have some of the apps in like beta testing. And we have already released the Linux apps.
Right. Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So and right now it's kind of the heavy guns with Mac and Windows that are like lacking. But yeah, and also some things that we also bring is kind of like quick add, like global quick add on all platforms. At least like I'm actually unsure we can do it on Linux. I hope we can. But at least like for Mac and Windows, we'll have like global quick add that we kind of have like all the quick add features that you would expect. And on Windows, we have actually never had that. So.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that's just one thing. And honestly, like, we are just gearing up and like hiring more people. Like, you know, we are on a hiring spree, building stronger teams. So I'm quite excited of where we actually take this. Yeah. So that's one component. It's kind of integrations and just like the desktop apps. Another component is like we have actually for a long time rewritten, or like we still lack to do the full migration, but we have actually new models. So this is basically like maybe Foundations version 2, because we basically need to move from one system to another, and you need to do it while people add, you know, millions of stuff per day. So it's kind of like an engineering challenge, a big one, but we're kind of like finishing that up, and that will kind of like enable like collaboration, and not only collaboration, but also just like sharing Todoist in a lot more places. So for instance, you can imagine that you can actually take Today's project and embed it in like Notion or a paper doc or wherever you want. And then you would kind of have like seamless synchronization and stuff like that. So, you know, that's at least like the next step is kind of like this, just like, you know, integrating Todoist with a lot of stuff, and also having collaboration and like sharing, like building models so that they can be, because currently it's kind of like a huge hack fest. Of how it works.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's all I think stuff that will sort of be a long-term like the long-term sort of structure of it, won't it? And I'm curious as well, like, because you guys obviously put a lot of time and attention into like boards, and I'm like wondering, like, you know, like what Trello's doing with, they're adding like tables now, and they've considering adding more like views. Would you ever add to that list of views for a list or board and a sort of different view, or would you just, or would that be too complicated, or would it sort of just add too many layers for people?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like we are watching this space, but you know, we don't have any plans to do this right now. I think it's possible that we at some point could do it. The problem though is I think really like we need to hit the sweet spot between like complexity and like simplicity. And some of these, like I think Asana is a great example where, you know, like it's really powerful, but it's really hard to use, and this like learning curve is really steep. And then suddenly like maybe you also lose some of like the love for the product because, you know, it's basically too complex. And for us, it's kind of like we really want to keep stuff simple. So you don't need to have like a PhD in order to kind of use the product, you know.
I know what you mean.
So for us, that's probably not really in the books right now. And I think we have some other stuff that we want to solve first before we really venture into this.
And on Twitter, I think it must have been a month or two ago, you mentioned sort of not hinting, but your sort of interest or passion in wanting to create a note-taking application, done the to-do list application, a note-taking app. Would you ever, like, have you sort of built on those thoughts or had any more ideas about that since?
Yeah. I mean, you know, if things go really well with just like the growth, like continuous growth of Todoist and Twist, like we will definitely invest into this. And honestly, like from my perspective is, and company perspective as well, really kind of want to build like a new operative system for work, and I think like knowledge sharing is a huge part of that, and just like integration between like communication, organization, and knowledge sharing. So there's actually very few companies that does this right now. So like one of them is kind of like Google and Microsoft. They have kind of like these, and we actually want to challenge this with kind of like a new stack. So that will be like, you know, that would be like a decade old, decades like to actually accomplish that, because like each of these fields, like you have companies that have like thousands of people, that work for them. Like Slack, has thousands of people, and just communication layer. Asana as well probably has over 1,000 people. So if you actually go in and solve all of these, like this will need to become a huge company. But I think like there's so much power into this, because a lot of stuff that we use right now, it's like, like really, really old, like Word, for instance, like it's probably 30 years old. And I think like we can actually fundamentally challenge this, and especially if you kind of have like tighter not collaboration, but integration between the different components. Because right now, if you look at it, like there's so much spread. Like somebody uses like Slack and Asana, but like they don't really work that well together. And even if you're like into like just one ecosystem, like for instance Microsoft's kind of the tools that you get aren't the best. They are not the most modern, and a lot of time they're just like copying stuff. I mean, if you look at, they have like 5 different like task management apps, and they don't really know like what they are doing. Like, I think that will be like our future goal. It's kind of challenging this, and like really, trying to build something like that's radically better. This said, we may also fail, because it's like this is a really tough one to do.
I mean, like, it's exciting. I guess in the future, like there might be people who just buy into the Doist subscription, and there's they get all their apps from there in terms of productivity. So it could be quite cool. And in terms of like, I think I've always been curious, like your opinion of like what do you think about like Notion and Roam research at the moment, because they're obviously getting a lot of attention from even the folks that are like doing task management. And I'm curious at what you think about it, because I definitely like I think you as sort of a thought leader in the sort of task management and productivity space. So I would like to hear if. It's a tough question, but
I mean, honestly, like I think a Notion is way overvalued, and I think actually it's a really badly designed, because it's based like everything in the kitchen sink. And if you actually look at, like, I've seen some of your videos where you actually like go over like workflows, it kind of looks like super complex. And I don't think like normal people, and you need to build something for normal people, like your mom or like my mom should be able to use this. And I don't think like normal people will go in and like create dashboards and databases and like link them together, and then templates, and then suddenly like so for me, like I understand that there's like a fan base that really loves this. Given my development background, I also like would love this, but like I think when you design products, you actually need to like do it on a much simpler level. And for me, like some other products, I'm first like that are really well designed, like WhatsApp. It's super simple. It does the job. It doesn't like have all kind of complexities. So I would be much like more interested in building like WhatsApp than actually Notion. Roam, on the other hand, I think is actually really, really interesting. And I think it's also much like, at least from the product perspective, much better designed, because it's much more opinionated. It's much more like it just goes in and solves one niche instead of like trying to solve everything for everybody. So like between like Roam and Notion, I would actually be more like a Roam fanboy than the Notion one. So that would be my perspective, and we'll see. I mean, I have also seen some Notion is used a lot in a collaborative space, and I also don't really think like this wild west approach works in a collaborative environment, because you need to actually have much more restrictions, because you basically, like, if you have 100 people working on something, you can't have everybody design their own database, so I mean, but it's a super interesting space. And like when we enter this, like we also want to be opinionated, and we will definitely like, also look at what others have done in this field and try to to get inspired.
Yeah, yeah,
So I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, we'll see how this goes.
yeah.
But task management itself, like, I don't think it's super affected by this,
Mm,
especially like Todoist, because like Todoist is based like planning your day,
yeah.
and planning a project, and it's like super simple and super structured.
Mm,
So we will still have like a huge market base even with Notion
yeah.
around. Like, I don't think like Notion replaces Todoist for some, but for most people it does not really do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And when the one of the questions I always had was when I guess like AI machine learning become like quite like much more relevant, how do you think that'll play into the task management space? Do you think that will sort of make task management more relevant in terms of like helping you find out what you want to do next? Have you guys given thought into that sort of realm?
Yeah. I mean, next year, like, we will actually focus much more on like bringing smartness, like, a machine learning AI,
Mm,
whatever we want to call it, into our products. And the reason for this, it's kind of very simple. I think like in the future, like if you don't have like machine learning or AI at the core of
mm,
the company,
yeah.
you'll basically be gone. Like, you will
Yeah.
not be able to compete. Uh,
Okay. Yeah.
and, and the reason for this is quite simple. Like, I'm not sure like if you use Google Photos or not.
Yeah, I
Uh,
love it. Yeah, great app.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it does auto tagging of people for you. Uh,
Mm,
that saves me so much time, and it also like search. Like, I can search for like red car, and I will see all the red cars that I've seen in my
yeah.
pictures throughout the history of like my picture taking. Like,
Yeah.
uh, that kind of smartness will enter the task management, team communication space as
Mm,
well. Uh,
yeah.
and like products that don't have this, like, imagine like you're competing against Google Photos and you don't have the auto tagging, and it's like super
Mm,
hard problem to solve. You will not have a chance. And the
no.
same thing goes for all other things. Um, so for us, like, we see this actually like as an existential threat. Like, if we don't become
Yeah.
good at this, you know, we will not have a company or a product
Yeah. Yeah.
in a few years. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like almost the base of it in the future. That's brilliant. And I want to go back to like that whole like that the whole sort of approach to meetings that you guys had. It's sort of like a final question. So obviously with meetings, do you have like a set of rules that you go, right, this is a meeting, this is not a meeting, let's just do asynchronous communication? Do you have like a set of a list or a mental list for the team?
Yeah, I mean, we don't really have it. I think like meetings have their place, and I think
Mm,
actually being good at meetings is a very important skill.
yeah.
So a lot of times, like, we have meetings, for instance, like for one-on-one calls, where you need to provide like some feedback to people, and just like connecting with people, it's a great way to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and then also like in a group setting, like if you have an agenda and you have something that you can't really do that easily, for instance, like
Yeah.
you have an important decision to make, and there's like some, you're not agreeing on the solution.
Mm,
um, in these cases, I think meetings are a great tool, and
yeah.
you can also have like much better like discussions with this. I think meetings are very bad if, for instance, like you don't have an agenda, you're just meeting to meet, and then like people just like throw different random stuff on the agenda,
Yeah.
and you don't actually have actionables out of the
Yeah.
meeting. Um,
Bit
so
like me today.
yeah.
Just
No, I mean, that's the thing. I think like sometimes these can be very good, but a lot of times, like in a professional setting, I think you actually need to have an agenda. You need to have clear actionables. Yeah, and we actually used to do this to track this. So I have like a ton of shared projects that I have with just like people like for one-on-one calls where we have like
yeah.
agenda, actionables, and then if you talk about something, you add it as a task.
Yeah.
because then you don't really have like these meetings where you talk and then nothing comes out of the meeting, like that. Those are the worst ones. Yeah.
They are definitely worse ones. Brilliant. I think that's a really wholesome approach. And well, I'll make sure to sort of share a few articles below, because you guys are quite good with meetings, for sure. Amir, thanks so much for coming on. Is there anything before we go that you wanted to say to the Todoist community, the Twist community, that that you might want to say?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me here. And as a general man, I mean, we are super excited about this, and we are super passionate as well. So yeah, a lot of people, I hope like people know that we care deeply about this space. Like for us, it has never been like a business, like like we don't do this to make money. Like we actually do this to kind of like because we love to build these type of things. And yeah, I mean, I'm super excited about the future, and I hope like we can keep improving Todoist and like making it the best at just like organizing people's work and life. So for people that have supported us, and there are some people that have like been at this for 10 plus years on the platform, like we are so grateful. And we'll try our best not to disappoint people. Yeah,
they'll love it. Thanks, Amir, for taking your time out, and we'll make sure to include all the links in the description. But thank you very much, and we'll see you guys soon.